Hail and Mash's Kingdom, welcome to Dragon Age Veilguard. It's me, Spot the King, and today I will show you my awesome build for Warrior. And Warrior doesn't need to be a boring shield and sword guy. We will be able to do insane amount of damage in a really quick amount of time and be fast, powerful, and you don't even need to aim to deal like 7-8k damage when enemies standing still. Don't forget to launch your some like necrotic abilities. And by the way, this build is completely broken actually. It's like breaks the game, it's insanely overpowered. Today's specialization is a Reaper, and to make everything work we need the right companions and the right items, of course. I will explain everything, but we will start from the skill tree as always. So, who is Reaper actually? The Reaper is Defender of the Living and Dead. The Murnwatch Reaper leeches life from enemies, throws shields with precision and turns their own pain into strength. And yeah, when the first time Reaper was announced as a class, I was hoping to have some kind of dual-wielding skies insane powerful guy, but Reaper in this game is more like of a shield thrower, so you can call him Captain America or as you wish. We will start as Warrior class at its core anyway, and we will start by going into Reaper category as fast as possible, but Reaper will be locked behind level 20, and then two specializations, kinda deep specializations in Reaper, will be blocked behind level 30 and 40. While this build will be suitable for any high-level character, you can start playing it as fast as possible, and I will show and explain what to do in early and mid-game also. And you don't need to only rely on your shield, it's also a very powerful build even when you're using your basic weapons. We will focus a lot on our skills. But first of all, let's talk about early game. So, I like to start with Shield Volley. That's the first most important skill for you to start being a nightmare for your enemies. Basically, you will be able to launch your shield, and then when it's your turn, you can launch heavy attack to throw shield one more time. Shield throw is really like, let me actually show you. Shield throw is the ability that you will launch and it will take some time, so that's we are basically preparing to launch a shield. And you don't want to prepare for 5 seconds to make insane amount of damage and then do nothing. From now on you will be able to throw shields, but you need to time it correctly, so when it's getting back you got some time to throw it again and then again, and then you just need to charge one more shield. So you need to learn how to do it, and then we get in Rancor. Rage takes 50% longer to begin to decay. That's very nice because in my experience, fighter is the hardest character to start using your skills. You know, all skills is really takes so much time to build some rage until you get some good gear and a lot of levels. And then we get in our first skill, Spectral Bulwark. So it's smash duration ability with necrotic damage, and as a Reaper we of course will be focusing on necrotic damage. So this will create shields around you, and when enemies trying to damage you they will take some stagger, and this shield will basically retaliate with some damage. It will increase defense by 50%. And basically it's a really nice and powerful skill because you don't need any rage to cast it. It's got only cooldown, so you can cast it completely for free as much as you wish every 60 seconds. And while there's a bunch of skills in the bottom right over here, on the bottom basically, like a lot of skills, we don't need to get there right now. Instead we're going straight to the top, to the Reaper part of the skill tree and getting rage regeneration plus 10%. Then enemies will take 100% more damage and stagger from environmental impacts. And while that's cool for some of the fighters, for some of the warriors, it doesn't actually benefit us, so we don't care about it too much. And here we will get damage versus barrier plus 20%, which is great because barrier is a white line above enemies' health. It will be mostly on mages, and you will have increased damage versus barrier with your shield attack anyway, with your throwing shield attack. So now you will be basically mage's menace because you will destroy them really easily. And here we will get insane buff over here, eclectic armor. So while wearing different classification of helmet and armor, you will have more bounces of shield you will have more range attack damage, and range attack is our shield toss, of course, and more weak point damage. So that's where basically you will start to sculpt your build, and it will be like as fast as level 5, so you're basically completing your tutorial level 1 mission and you will be ready to do it. And this means you need to wear different classification helmet and armor to get this buff, so don't forget to wear, for example, medium armor with heavy helmet. We're not talking about gear right now, I will explain it a little bit later, but just keep it in mind, so to have this buff active at all time, you just need to have different armor and helmet. While you're fighting with your shield, you will try to aim for enemy weak points, mostly like their head, so hitting head of most enemies will make it weak point hit, and when you defeat enemy with weak point hit, after getting ignition rune over here, ignition node, you will have flaming weapons, and flaming weapons will deal more damage, so you will inflict damage with your basic attacks with flame, with extra flame damage, very nice for early game, pretty nice rune over here. And then we get in this node over here, ricochet shot, more bounces to your shield. So at this point of the game, all basic shields without extra bounces in them will have 3 bounces in total and can hit up to 3 enemies with 1 launch, and also you can make 1 more attack with return fire, shield volley, so that's pretty crazy how much shields you can throw at such early levels. All abilities we will use today will be duration abilities, so first of all get Bloody Advance, it's projectile duration ability and it will apply thunder to enemies. And what you're doing, you're throwing a fan of blades that seek out and impale nearby enemies. It will apply bleeding, and while enemies are still impaled, charged shield toss will cause burst of damage to nearby enemies. So it's basically the skill that will increase our damage output significantly instantly. Also, if you crit with the spell, target will be chilled, so he will be slowed and also will take some cold damage, and then we can actually start increasing power of our abilities. So what I really like to do is to get this node, upgrade duration abilities to apply necrosis on impact. So now you enter the fight, you cast Spectral Bulwark, enemy hit you, he will be with necrosis on him instantly. When you get a little bit of rage, you can cast this spell and then throw shield, defeat enemy with weak point hit, you will get flaming weapons, and also enemies will be applied with extra necrosis stack, with bleeding, a lot of damage over time effects, pretty crazy. Then we're getting over here, getting weak point damage plus 10%. Again, we will be using shield a lot, hit a lot of weak points, and we need this extra weak point damage right now. And then we're getting Master Throw. So shield toss can now be charged up to additional level. And basically you can charge it for a little bit more time for extra and pretty significantly insane amount of damage. So that's the point where you will be around level 10 probably, if you're finding some wolf statues and getting more skill points than you should have right now, if you just leveled up. You can't get Reaper specialization right now, and we got some options where we can go. First of all, we can get this primer duration plus 20%, and for each active duration ability effect, you take 5% less damage from all sources. Very nice, because all our abilities will be duration. As I told you, we can activate all 3 abilities at the same time and have a lot more protection instantly. And at this point of the game, before we hit Reaper specialization, we need to decide where we want to go. It will depend on how you like to play. So I got 2 options for you. One option, if you like more like one shield toss followed by a lot of like basic fighting and using more like ability focused fighting right now. So if you're using more of your like basic weapon and less of your shield throw, if you're not relying on your throw a lot, then go to the bottom right over here, and I will explain it later, because I really recommend you going to the top part of the skill tree. First of all, we get an affliction damage plus 10%, and we already can apply shield, necrosis and bleeding at the same time with our abilities, so it will increase damage of all afflictions, and a pretty nice boost for us. But then we get in Staggering Toss. Shield Toss converts 25% of your current rage into Stagger. We will rely on this node a lot later. It will be insane buff for our character, but even now it's very nice. Right now, biggest problem again, as I told you, to actually get some rage and keep it throughout the fight. But still, hitting few enemies and instead of casting your abilities, doing this spell, like doing shield throws will stagger enemies most of the time, and some shields got nice stagger stat actually. Then we getting shield toss damage plus 10%, self-explanatory, you just getting more damage instantly with your shield throws. And then pretty nice trait, return of sender, so you can tap block button when projectile should hit you and you can throw this projectile on enemies, and basically you can stand in the range and just throw range attacks at enemies, throw their range attacks at them, and pretty like fun stuff. Then I like to go to the bottom left over here, physical resistance plus 10%. Like most common resistance, it's really nice and smart to get a little bit of physical resistance. And then getting reinforcement, which gives 10% more damage for each of our active advantages. If you're wearing different combination of helmet and armor, basically it means you will always have plus 10% damage flat to all your like damage throughout the game, so you will always have this advantage. But when you kill enemy with weak point shot, you get in flaming weapons advantage, and there's a bunch of buffs, so that's pretty nice and powerful damage booster, especially for fighters, for warriors who have like pretty weak damage in my opinion, but not this build of. Then we get in rage generation plus 10%, advantage duration plus 20% over here, generate 4 rage when taking damage. Again, basically over here we're focusing a little bit on rage generation right now. More health, more maximum rage, ground breaker, which is strike control skill. And why do we need this skill anyway? Basically when you get any ability, it will increase ability damage for all of your skills, so just even picking skills without using them will give you some benefits. And takedown damage plus 15% over here. So all this part that I just explained will be taken only when you got some 3 points after you hit level 20. So probably over here you will be around level like 15 or so, and then while you're going for level 20 you get like 1, 2, 3, 4 nodes over here, and then from 20 to 25 you will switch into getting these points in here. So first of all, our ultimate ability, Spirit Storm. Our damage will be necrotic damage with this ability, and pretty nice and crazy amount of damage actually, while also applying Siphon to enemies. And Siphon is kind of different form of necrosis. It will deal necrotic damage over time, but will return potion as healing, which is great, so we will be a lot more tankier right now. And also our last duration ability, so it's strike duration, a lot of necrotic damage, will detonate weakened, apply Siphon, so you will be able to basically heal from your enemies by getting some portion of your health that you inflict as damage. I mean, like some portion of your damage you inflict with and then we're getting nodes over here. So first of all, we're increasing our necrotic damage. Of course, all our skills is necrotic damage. That's a smart thing to do. And also we're getting upgrade to projectile abilities. Projectile abilities will deal 25% more damage, but consume 10% health of course, and it will affect our bloody advance. Projectile ability will deal nice amount of damage, and don't forget, it will also apply to shield toss after you use this ability. Then we get an affliction damage plus 10% with more duration to afflictions, and afflictions is basically bleeding, siphoned, chilled, and other afflictions we can inflict. And also I like to upgrade duration abilities. While any duration ability is active, your charge attacks also apply necrosis to enemies. So what will happen right now? Basically you shoot this projectile duration ability, and it will apply bleeding to a lot of targets at the same time. You can launch a Reaper strike duration ability that will apply Siphoned. If you critical strike with Bloody Advance, it will also apply Shield, and when you hit with Shield right after with charged attack or Shield charge attack, it will apply more necrosis stacks. So that's pretty like insane stuff, because you can apply a lot of damage over time effects to a lot of enemies in the short amount of time, and you will have nice benefits from this at around level 20, while you're still getting your gear for the build. Because after you get all gear, you won't even need this like damage over time effects. You will basically one-shot almost every enemy in this game. Before level 30, we're trying to get all points in here to level up all our like shield power, and you will already be insanely powerful. When you hit level 30, you instantly want to get dash throw. So when you launch in your range attack, it will change damage of shield toss to necrotic damage. Again, it will be a lot easier to get crazy amounts of damage and boost our character if all our damage is the same type. So when you get in some necrotic damage and necrotic damage gear, it will affect your basically skills, abilities, but it won't affect your basic attacks. Now everything changed. So now your shield will deal necrotic damage, it will deal extra damage to enemies who is vulnerable to necrotic damage, and basically you will be insanely powerful. So we get some protection and then we get some leech effectiveness. Again, we can leech some health with our abilities when we siphon enemies, and that's pretty nice to have this ability to regain some health. But also we will increase our health restoration by giving us living decay greater pace. If your necrotic damage now has 50% penetration, so our shield will penetrate enemies by 50%, will basically ignore resistances, and will restore 2% of our health. We throw shield, basically just imagine this stuff, we're throwing shield, it will bounce at least 3 times with basic shield. It means it will do 3 instances of damage, and every shield throw can restore 6% of our health flat. And we can basically rebounce this shield with our shield volley 2 times, so every time we're throwing shield, we're basically restoring 20% of our health. Almost 20% of course. And also we're getting Desperation, regaining bonus damage relative to the amount of health you target and you have lost. So again, enemies inflicting some damage to us, or inflicting damage to them, very good versus bosses to increase your damage in the main game. And that's basically the place where you will be around level like 35 probably or so. Before you hit level 40, that's where we will focus on our skills. So first of all, we get in advantage duration, and we are in the bottom right of the tree in the abilities category, and upgrading our duration abilities to have increased effect by 50%. Also, it's nice to have more damage versus barrier over here and upgrade duration abilities to grant immovable. Now, when you use duration ability, you won't be moved, so you can charge your shield freely and you won't be interrupted. Then your rage no longer decays below 50, allowing you to sustain it between fights. So pretty nice stuff. You will always have some rage to cast your projectile ability from the start of the fight, at least. I like to have more necrosis stacks and basically level up everything in here, gaining more rage, getting skill, which is a really powerful skill by the way. It's area duration, insane amount of necrotic damage, but I don't like to stand in one place and I really enjoy Spectral Bulwark more. But if you don't want the Spectral Bulwark, then Deadly Ground is a nice substitute for this skill. Basically, it's crazy amount of necrotic damage and you will gain enhanced damage while you're standing inside of the field. Definitely think about the skill too. Then we get in this note over here to increase necrotic damage plus 10%, gain enhanced damage on critical hit kill, and also critical damage plus 10%. Pretty nice buff, and damage versus armor plus 20%. So that's kinda buff to our necrotic damage, nice skills that you can use. And then at level 40 we're getting back over here to our Reaper specialization and getting perfect throw. Now when you release your shield as a perfect charge, when it's just reached perfect charge, you will deal more damage and more bounces at the same time. Then we get in more bounces to shield, more shield toss damage, and even more. While our shield is bouncing, we get in this Spirit of Hunger. Killing enemies spawns necrotic projectiles that follows enemies. So you will kill a lot of enemies, shield will bounce, and also some necrotic projectiles will bounce between them. Basically deal some damage. That's pretty crazy combination and insane power boost for us. And also shield toss bounces now apply an affliction based on your shield damage type. Our shield damage type right now will be necrotic, so we will apply a lot of necrotic and necrosis stacks when shield will bounce, which is really crazy. And basically build is completely ready, and if you're like leveling to the final parts of the game, you can have this note over here, equipping ability of each damage type, increase ability damage by 20%. It won't affect us, that's why we're not going here beforehand, but here is some nice notes. Damage versus armor, flaming weapons on takedown, charge attack damage plus 10%, performing takedown heals you for some health, stagger from weapon attacks, and also skill just to get more ability power, and same over here, stagger from charge attacks plus 20%, and one more ability for ability power. That's it basically, the skill tree is done, and again, most of the build is ready over here when you hit level 30 or so. Now let's talk about gear, because it's most important stuff. that will affect how you play and what you can do. So we of course will be playing with basic like one-handed weapon and a shield all the time, but in reality you can play with any weapon you like. Shield throw will work anyway, and we're not really like reliant on shield block a lot, but still we got some nodes and skills that will affect our shield. And let's talk about our shield. So first of all, basically to find any gear in this game, you need to watch on this icon over here. It shows Mourn Watch icon. This means you will most likely find this gear in Necropolis halls, because it's Mourn Watch territory. So look at the traders in this territory, chests, do some quests, and you will probably find this item. But for stuff like unique items in this build, I got separate video, link in the description, where I show every location of every unique item in the game. Like, items can be different for mage, rogue and warrior, but locations will be same. Just look in the same locations and you will find this helmet. Then let's talk about our shield. So I use Necropolis Defender for this build. It got insane physical damage at its core, but also it will be translated to necrotic damage instantly when we hit our Reaper specialization and get some nodes at level 30. And also the shield will deal more necrotic damage, which will be amplified by all other buffs we got. It got one more shield toss bounce when you upgrade this stuff, and yeah, when you first buy the shield, Necropolis Defender, or you find this, you will have only one bonus basically, and you need to find multiple Necropolis Defenders to upgrade it to legendary tier. Then when you upgrade it, you will have shield toss charged to maximum, will apply necrosis to the first enemy hit, and when shield toss hits a target, any nearby enemies suffering from necrosis will take additional damage. So again, shield will bounce, all enemies will be suffered from necrosis from our skills, and that's pretty crazy amount of extra damage that will be applied to our enemies. Is there any substitution for this shield? Yeah. So what you can experiment with is Skirmishers Around. It's a Wheel Jumper's shield, and it will increase your range attack damage, weak point damage, stagger on weak point hits, and shield toss damage will increase with each bounce. So pretty nice stuff, but I got more like success and more damage with Necropolis Defender as I tested. There is also fun shields that you can play with. Wedge of Destiny is a unique target, and yeah, you can basically get this basically cheese in your hands and throw the cheese. It's pretty fun, but if you're going for power, of course, I recommend Necropolis Defender. So for our weapon, I will focus on Woodsong Cleaver. It's nice epic axe. Right now it's epic, of course, and it's very good if you will be able to upgrade it to legendary tier. Basically, it will help you generate some rage. Plus 15 rage generation, 100% rage generating from taking damage, and barrier and armor damage is increased by 1% for every 2 rage. So it will not only give us ability to generate more rage, no matter what we are doing, but it also will increase damage to barrier and armor based on our total rage. While we're not using our maul, still we can benefit from stuff on it. And again, we get 15% rage generation over here, rage on kill, and enhanced damage when expending rage 3 times in a short duration. What is the cool part? You don't need this item to be upgraded to like legendary tiers. Actually, you're okay with just rage on kill. So like a rare Elven Rock Breaker will work for you and will give you nice benefits. And basically for your like two-handed weapon, just look for something that gives you bonuses. For example, Vigilant Great Hammer will give you 30 defense even if you're not using this weapon. So like, who cares? Just pick something that gives you some bonuses, but I recommend this Elven Rock Breaker, of course. And now we're going to our main and most important item, of course. It will be Field Commander's Helmet. This helmet will completely change how we play a little bit, but it's also very nice and giving us a lot of damage. At first I experimented with Forest Guardian Wheel helmet, basically helmet that gives more weak point damage since we're attacking from the range, but in the end I stuck with Field Commander's Helmet. First of all, it's heavy helmet, gives insane amount of defense, a little bit of ability damage, which we don't care about, we're still using our shield most of the time. And what is cool part, so it will slow down your rage regeneration, but all of our abilities now have only cooldown, but no rage cost. While it may sound a little bit like bad for us, since we will be able to deal basically a little bit of damage with our abilities, and then we need to wait for full minute until we can cast again. Actually, that's pretty crazy, Helmet, because first of all, you just don't need to gain any rage to cast your abilities. So, from the start of the fight, we can cast all duration abilities, we won't use any rage, and we will get a lot of benefits, like a lot of necrosis, bleeding stacks on enemies, and a lot of protection for us. Then, your damage is increased by 1% for every 2 rage. And because we're not spending any rage, and we're basically countering rage generation debuff with all our weapons and other stuff, we actually will have almost full rage for the full of the, duration of the fight, and we will have insane amount of extra damage. As you can see, our total rage is 5 bars, and 5 bars it means 250 rage total. Basically 1 bar is 50 rage. In total, it's 125% bonus damage for every attack, ability, and basically for whatever you will wish to cast. Which is insane, considering we got Jumpers Deft Leathers as our armor. It's light armor with nice ability damage and range attack bonus damage, more shield charged bonus damage. While charging shield toss you will have more defense, and we will have immovable buff at us when we are under duration ability effect. So basically we will have insane protection, insane defense while we're charging our shield, and fully charged shield tosses are highly likely to disrupt all enemies. Basically it's nice armor, and again it will work even from basic tiers. You don't need legendary tier to make the build work. That's the beauty of this build, and basically for most of my builds. I'm not relying on some crazy late game stuff, and you can start playing this stuff from the early game and advance through this build, learn a little bit while you're advancing through the game. Then we get Watcher's Hold as our belt, again pretty basic belt just for extra necrotic damage, and our amulet. So it's a unique amulet, the Burden. 20% damage while at low health, pretty nice bonus. Low health triggers 10% earlier, and your health cannot go above 70%. Again, I experimented a lot with some amulets, and most amulets will just increase damage of your abilities or some resistances, some other buffs. And while it definitely can go with something like duration ability damage amulet and gain rage on kills with duration abilities, I really found a lot of nice times with the Burden, since it will give us ability to trigger low health a lot more often and deal crazy amounts of damage. So if you're not one-shotting enemies, when you're dropping a little bit of health, you will. Also, you can have some fun with Unyielding Stone as a unique amulet. And again, if you don't want to risk to the low health, go with Magister's Bargain. It's up to you, it doesn't matter too much. What is matter is our rings. So, first ring is Graven Opal, that will give us more range attack damage, weak point damage, range attack damage versus barrier, and on weak point hit you can gain 10 rage if you upgrade it to legendary tier. I haven't upgraded yet, but still, it's nice ring even from the get-go with more range attack damage. And for second ring, it's Precious Decay. It's a ring that gives you necrotic damage, ability necrotic damage versus health, and all other bonuses. All other damage bonuses will contribute to our necrotic damage bonus, which is great. For our runes, we got Scourge, that is basically added necrotic damage, Ascent, just flat added damage, and also Shatter, 10% range attack damage. And last but not least is our Augments. Yeah, you can augment your weapons and the Lighthouse Trader when you advance through the campaign a little bit, and on shield I got added necrotic damage. Again, we get such a crazy amount of buffs for necrotic damage in our build, basically, that just by adding flat 40 damage will give us insane amount of damage total with our shield. For Axe, I got damage at high health augment. Again, we will be at high health most of the time, but I guess it's countered when we get in the Burden amulet. Maybe not, whatever. It doesn't matter too much, build working completely fine. So, charge attack damage on our two-handed weapon, 10% health on our helmet, and 10% defense on armor. For amulet, I got plus 10% health damage and 25% duration ability damage, 25% strike ability damage for our rings. You also can augment your abilities, so 50% ability armor damage on our Bloody Advance. Spectral Bulwark I got 50% radius, and on Reaper I got minus 50% cooldown duration. And now, last but not least, companions. Yeah, by the way, some people asking me what is your starting faction. Of course, it will be Moon Watch for this guy, but actually it doesn't matter too much for this build. You can pick any. Wheel Jumper will work for extra weak point damage and maybe even like better pick than Moon Watch. I just got Moon Watch character and that's it. Companion that we are looking for is Emric, and we want to find stuff for him. Stuff will be Hermetic Pendulum. Attack my target, applies vulnerability to necrotic damage. That's the first point we need. And also Entangling Spirits, the skill that can be leveled up in his skill tree. And basically when you complete his quest line, you will gain this Hero of Veilguard status, and yellow health threshold is now increased by 10%. So with the burden, all this combination will start to make sense, and we will deal like pretty crazy amount of damage when we just drop health just by a little bit. So with Hermetic Pendulum we can use attack my target and make target vulnerable to necrotic damage. If you upgrade this stuff, vulnerability will be increased by 50%, and also you want to combine it with Chittering Signet Ring, so it's trinket for our friend Emric, and applying Weakened also applies vulnerability to necrotic damage. Now you can basically apply attack my target vulnerability to necrotic damage first if target is resistant to necrotic damage. You will have some time while you will be doing crazy amounts of extra damage with your shield throws and other necrotic spells, and when the effect will turn off, thanks to this ring, basically you need to apply Weakened, and enemy will be vulnerable to necrotic damage. So you will be able to apply this Entangling Spirits that will apply Weakened to target, and target will be vulnerable to necrotic damage instantly. When effect will wear off, you just use attack my target one more time, and that's how you fight versus like big dragons who is resistant to necrotic damage and other really powerful enemies. Second companion can be any. Actually, I like to use Davrin for like some protection, and also to be able to taunt targets, so like Battle Cry is a nice ability to taunt enemies, but you can use any companion you like. And now it's time to see this crazy character in battle. So, first of all, this enemies right now is vulnerable to necrotic damage anyway, so all we need to do is to just taunt them. For example, we can use Davrin for this stuff, and basically they are all taunted. Now we can charge our shield and release our shield at the maximum charge, and basically start spamming our extra charge attack button, and that's it. So already some enemies are downed. So if you want to see the exact damage we're doing, let me try to charge and to release the shield. You see it's like 6-7k damage, and we're basically like throwing shield from every time with maximum damage. Everyone is done in a matter of seconds. And that's on hard difficulty where enemies is really like powerful. So this guy is resistant to necrotic damage. That's why we will try to, for example, taunt them and use attack my target. It's part of this combat on top. So Emric will try to attack this target. Now look, Emric will do one attack, and he is necrotic vulnerable right now. So we're doing insane amount of damage with our shield toss instantly to this guy, and basically he will be dead in like matter of seconds. So he is done because we applied some damage over time effect. And now another guys. So now look, they're vulnerable to necrotic damage actually. But if you need to make them vulnerable no matter what, if they're not vulnerable, you just use Entangling Spirits, and that's it. So after using Entangling Spirits, they will definitely be vulnerable to necrotic damage. And even if they're not vulnerable to necrotic damage, like these guys right now, for example, you still can use it to make them vulnerable. So just look at this. Now he is vulnerable to necrotic damage, and basically they will be done in no time. Again, my favorite stuff is to taunt them and then charge shield at maximum charge, and then just start to attack with my shield left and right. And as you can see, it's AoE basic damage that bounces between enemies and dealing crazy amounts of damage. And that's basically where we haven't done any skill yet. And look, our skill's not using any rage. We can start by using Bulwark. That's why I like using Bulwark. Basically, when enemies trying to attack, they will be pushed away, and we can start charging our shield. We won't be moved, interrupted. I missed, but that's my aim, not the problem of the build, of course. And just like that, we basically destroyed everyone in here. And don't forget, for maximum impact, for real maximum impact, that's what you want to do. So first of all, again, it's nice to taunt enemies. They're vulnerable to necrotic damage anyway. And our most important skill, to make enemies basically like question their existence, bloody advance. So look at the skill. We're throwing this Reaper. They are bleeding, they have necrosis, and look at this damage. That's pretty like insane amount of damage. There's even not enough room on the screen for the numbers. And that's basically how you play. You're doing some necrosis damage abilities, you're applying a lot of debuffs, you're throwing shields for 9-10k damage. That's the maximum damage in the game, and destroying enemies with one hit really easily. Against strong enemies, you can spam all 3 abilities at the same time, but I really recommend doing them from time to time. Like this, you can push enemies away, you can apply a little bit of attacks, you can even hit with your shield normally, but most of the time, what you will do, you will just get a little bit back, charge your shield, at maximum charge you release your shield, and start throwing it left and right, and you don't even need to aim to deal like 7-8k damage when enemies standing still. Don't forget to launch your some like necrotic abilities and just cycle between them, close the distance with this Reaper attack, apply Siphon, and just destroy enemies like that. Really fun, powerful, and extremely OP broken build. I hope you enjoy this build and you will have blast playing it in Dragon Age Veilguard. Watch other cool builds on screen right now and see you in the next videos.